Well, welcome back to week 4 of Fall Faith. This is our exploration of Robert Brummett's transformational book, Living Originally. At 9 o'clock, I accidentally said his transformational novel. And you know, there's times where I said it does feel like fiction, where you read some of the things he's asking you to, oh, really, come on. But no, it's this wonderful book that we're looking at, this idea of transforming our lives so that we can live from that origin of God within us, so that we can live every moment shining the light that we are. Or we can at least set our intention to do that. You see, that's what this practice is really about. It's about setting your intention so that in those moments where we kind of slip a little bit and we forget that our intention is to be the light of God, we're able to return to that as quickly as possible. So that's what we've been doing. And really, up to this point, all of the practices that we've explored, all of the things that we've talked about, they've all been internal practices. It's all been things that we just do just with ourselves. This idea of awareness, this idea that we become aware of the feelings, the emotions, the things that are happening around us. And so we become aware of them so that we can either do something about them or do what we love to do so much, and that's ignore them. But ideally, then you move into the second practice that we talked about, this idea of acceptance. So you gain an awareness of something that's going on, and then you move into this step of just accepting that this is what my experience is right now. It doesn't mean I have to like it, and it doesn't mean that I can't do anything to change it, but this is where I'm at right now. And then from accepting it, we can look and see if there's any sort of forgiveness that needs to happen. If there's anything that I need to forgive to be able to truly move past it so that I can get back to living from the light of God that we are. And those are all internal things. That's all stuff that we do on our own. Today, we're going to look at something a little bit different. We're going to look at how we can take these practices and then make them external into the world around us. See, today we're moving into a practice called universal benevolence. Universal benevolence. And actually, I'd like to just share with you what Robert wrote about universal benevolence. It's right at the top of chapter 6. In fact, it's the very first line he writes, right after he says, what is this practice? And Robert writes, benevolence is derived from a Latin word which means a disposition of goodwill and kindness. Universal benevolence is extending this disposition to all persons and ultimately to all beings. So I think we all do a pretty good job of just being benevolent in our general lives, of having this disposition of goodwill and kindness. It's real easy to do that with the people that you know and you like. You know, I have no problem being benevolent with Sarah and Harper and all of you. It's the guy in the grocery store that has his cart sitting right here, and then he's standing right next looking at the stuff, and he's blocking the whole aisle, and he's trying to figure out if it's worth it to spend the extra 5 cents for that 0.5 of an ounce, and you're standing behind him going, come on, just pick one or the other, and then you go around to the other side, and there he is again. Harder to be benevolent with that person. I had somebody right before the first service, and he said, so is this the day where you're going to teach us to be benevolent to everybody, even the ones we don't like? Well, that's nice, but no. I want you to know it's okay to have moments where you don't feel benevolent towards everybody. You see, this practice is about setting the intention to be benevolent towards everybody around you. It's about setting the intention to have universal benevolence. And that's an important difference or distinction for us to make. Because what happens if we say, well, I'm going to feel benevolent all day, every moment of my life? Well, what happens when you don't? Then we start beating ourselves up. Oh, I knew better than that. I should have done that. But if we have the intention to have that disposition of kindness and goodwill and generosity, and when we find those moments where we're not doing that, then guess what we get to do? We go look at our awareness. What is it that made me feel this way? Then we accept that and we do our forgiveness work. You see, this idea of universal benevolence, it's sort of the baseline for where we should be living our life in all moments. We should have that intention to have that disposition of goodwill and generosity. And when we find ourselves kind of off that baseline, that's where we get to go back to those other practices of awareness, acceptance, and forgiveness to bring ourselves back to that baseline, where we can just have universal benevolence towards the world. Now, there are actually this practice of universal benevolence that Robert talks about. It's actually 3 intentions that all kind of work together to make up the practice. So what we'll do is we're going to explore each one of those intentions, because it's not really the sort of thing, oh, just go be benevolent. But there are 3 things that happen in our lives that lead to that idea of looking around and seeing the oneness in everybody. So there are these 3 areas that you really do put into practice. And the first one, the first intention that you have for your life is appreciation. It's to appreciate those people and things around you. And we all know how that works. If somebody comes up to you and says, that was a really great job that you did the other day. You know, if after a potluck, if I come up to Gary and say, Gary, all of that work that you put into that potluck, the organization, thank you. Thank you for blessing us in that way. Gary feels blessed by that. So we know that when somebody appreciates us, it increases our own value. But did you know that when you appreciate somebody else, it also works to increase your value, your own internal value? You see, there's this interesting thing that happens. On a psychological level, when somebody appreciates us, it makes us feel good and our value increases. But on a spiritual level, when we appreciate someone else, internally our value increases. Because what we know is that the spiritual law says that if there's something within you that you want to express, the best way to express that is to give it. And so as we give appreciation out into the world, it comes back and it blesses us. And then what's interesting about that is it naturally leads into that second intention, the intention of kindness. You see, when I have the intention to appreciate everything in my life that I see that comes across in front of me, like, wow, that was awesome, thank you. When that happens, then I get this feeling of kindness that comes from that. And so we have an intention to be kind out into the world. And I thought it was very interesting in the book that Robert talked about the history, the etymology of the word kindness. It's an Old English word. And originally it was spelled with a Y, so it was K-Y-N-D. And kind meant your nation, it was your tribe. It was the people that were a part of the same group as you. So a kindness was somebody who was of your own kind. So originally it had this idea of sort of our community. We were all of this same kind, and then it grew into the idea of being generous and loving and friendly to others. But I think that really applies to this intention of being kind in the world. Because remember, our idea behind universal benevolence is to spread this disposition to all living beings. Because we're all part of the same kind. We're all part of the oneness of God, that Christ nature that's within us. And so it's not a question of who is it that we can be kind to and should I be kind to this person, but we just live from a place of kindness, or at least have the intention to do so. I think we're all capable of being kind. Some of us don't always choose it, but we have that intention to be kind. Now, there are many, many different ways for you to share your kindness in the world. But I think the important thing is that you set it as your intention, so that you're constantly reminded to be kind, to do what you can to help the world around you. And so there's a step that we've taken here at Unity Church of Overland Park as a community to set our intention for kindness, not just in the Kansas City area, but globally. So before I say too much more about that, I'd like to show you a video about the step that we're taking here at Unity Church of Overland Park. from this point forward, Unity Church of Overland Park is a fair trade congregation. And so what does that mean for us as a community? Well, that means that where possible, we will purchase a fair trade product if one exists. So the coffee that you drink downstairs after the services is fair trade coffee. Those of you that put sugar in that coffee, it's fair trade sugar. So we do our part in that respect. The other thing that we do is we kind of make it a part of the fabric of who we are, so that it reminds us of that intention to be kindness in the world. So if it's possible, if there's a product that we could get a fair trade from instead of another one, we buy the fair trade product. And we know that through having that intention of kindness, that what it does is it actually allows more income to go to those people that produce these goods. So that, yes, they can take care of their families and they can send their kids to school and all that. But the other thing that happens is that now they have the resources coming in to allow them to make the sort of changes to the factories, to the farms, that make their products more environmentally sustainable. So it helps preserve their environment, and it helps preserve the world for future generations. So if you'd like to know more about what fair trade is, there are these cards that are available on the reception counter, the one that's by the picture that says Unity Welcomes All. So you can pick one of these up, you can look at that. They also have a website called befair.org. If you take a look at that, it's filled with all sorts of information about what other products are available that are fair trade and that sort of thing. We'll have some classes and workshops coming up, so just pay attention to the bulletin, the Facebook site, and all of that. If this is a step that you'd like to take with us, we want to give you an opportunity to join us in this, to use this as your intention for kindness if you'd like. Right. So that's the second intention we have, is that we behave and act in a way that spreads kindness with the world. And that naturally leads us to our third intention. And our third intention is generosity. Now, I think a wonderful description for the word generosity is it's this idea that we give liberally and often of what we have. But there's a trap in that definition, and it's a trap that we've all fallen into. I know I have. And that's that so often we think that that idea of being generous is only restricted to what we can give financially, that we're generous with our money. And so we think, well, I can't do that right now. I just don't have the money to give. And our universal benevolence practice stops right there, because we're missing that intention of generosity. The truth about generosity is that it's just like kindness. There are limitless ways to be kind in the world. And the same thing is true with generosity. There are limitless ways to be generous in this world. You can give of your time, you can give of your talent, you can give of your treasure. You give of the part of God that you are, and that completes that cycle of being generous and kind to the world. See, it's not about how much money you give, it's about the blessing that you have in giving from that. Like I said earlier, when Gary's here helping with those potlucks and helping with memorial services, he's being generous with his time. Every one of you that shows up to usher, being generous with your time. That's all that it's about. We fall into the trap of thinking, oh, it's about what I can give financially, but it's not. It's about what I can give of my spirit. It's about the intention and the attitude, not the gift itself. And the amazing thing about this, what I love about this, is that these three intentions, it's not okay, I'm going to do step one, then I'll do step two, and then I'll do step three, and I'm done. So it's not about, oh, we appreciate, and then we're kind, and then we're generous, and then that's it. This is a cycle that we go through. So that when I'm generous, well, whoever it is that I'm generous with, or whatever my generosity looks like, and they appreciate that generosity. And because they've appreciated the generosity, they feel kindness. And because they feel kindness, then they're generous, and they bless somebody else. And then that person appreciates the gift they've received, and they feel kindness. And then they're generous with somebody else. So you see how this circle of universal benevolence begins to build. And so if we want to truly make a difference in the world, we set our intention to appreciate those things in our life that we value. Then we set our intention to share the kindness that comes from that value with those around us. And then as we grow in kindness, we give generously from that kindness, whatever that looks like for you. And we just keep that cycle rolling. And through spreading that universal benevolence, we're able to truly make that difference in the world. So we're going to have an opportunity to practice this today. Now, in the past, there's been a formal version of the practice and a general version of the practice for each week. And you can kind of do them interchangeably. It's a little bit different this week. This week, Robert suggests that you really focus on doing the formal practice. In fact, he recommends 1 week for each intention, so 1 week appreciating, 1 week kindness, and 1 week of generosity, and spending at least 20 minutes every day formally practicing that. We're not spending 20 minutes together here this morning practicing. We're just going to do kind of little examples so you get the idea. But the reason you want to do that formal practice first is that when you spend every day, 20 minutes every day, thinking about who you appreciate and why you appreciate, kind of tunes your mind into it so that when you have those little moments during your day that something happens, you think, oh, wow, thank you. You begin to notice those little things that you can appreciate that much more, and that's what the general practice is. The general practice is about infusing it into your life so that when you make it just through the stoplight, right as it turns red, oh, thank you, God. But you're able to see those moments when they show up. So let's go ahead and work on this formal practice of appreciation. I'd like to begin your appreciation practice with you this morning. So however it's comfortable for you, go ahead and prepare yourself for a time of meditation. And if that's sitting upright, that's fine. If you have room around you and you want to lay down, you can do that too. I'm used to the YOU, and so all right, let's meditate, and they all grab pillows. And if it's comfortable for you, go ahead and just close your eyes. And as we focus on this now moment, we allow our energy, our attention to focus in on our breathing. On our breath in, and on our breath out. And should our mind begin to wander, we simply return our focus to that breath. The breath in, and the breath out. In this moment, we allow all of those experiences, all of those individuals that we value to come to mind, seeing them floating through our minds. We simply make note of who they are or what the experience was. Now we allow one particular individual or situation to come to mind. Seeing that individual, that situation in our mind, we consciously send thoughts of gratitude, thoughts of appreciation, thoughts of blessing to that circumstance now. now we allow ourselves to come to mind. We allow our heart to open, and we allow ourselves to see something within that we appreciate about ourselves. And we allow those same thoughts and feelings of gratitude and love to flow within now to us as we appreciate who we are in the silence. So for all of this and more, we are grateful. Amen. So hopefully that gives you just a little bit of an idea of what this practice can look like. Now, the formal practice would be then just, you take each one of those people that you saw, that you were grateful for, and you take time to consciously appreciate them. To consciously say, thank you, God. So you take the time to appreciate. And then you allow that to grow into kindness so that you're aware and open of where you can generously give. And sometimes that generosity can be as simple as you just notice someone who just needs you to say, good morning, how are you? And in that moment, you've given generously from the presence of God that you are. And know that as you did that, and they appreciated you, they felt kindness, and the cycle continues. And we're able to truly make the difference in this world, because we're able to truly live originally. Now next week, we're going to take a look at the Buddhist notion of right speech. So we'll explore both this idea of right speech, but also this idea of deep intentional listening, so that we can really learn about, not just about being benevolent to everybody, but deeply and intentionally listening to who and what they are, so that we can honor the true Christ that everyone is. So God bless you, and I'll see you then.